So Jon Stewart did this, right? So now I want to preface everything I ever say about Jon Stewart is that he did an amazing television show. He kind of invented his own style, a style of comedy, a genre of comedy, as if you will. And so nothing but props to him. And I was always jealous because I wish I could have that kind of crew around me to help me create a show.
You know who else was jealous? Mark Maron used to tell me. That was the first guy who hired me was Mark Maron.
Oh,
and
yeah?
He would go, how come he gets to be the cute Jew? Fair enough, Maron. I don't know. I think you're pretty cute.
I thought Mark Maron was very cute.
It was really funny.
But Jon Stewart, since leaving The Daily Show, it seemed like maybe a lot of the gift came from his crew because he is falling down on his face every 5 minutes. Hard on his face, like hard. He's just doing propaganda. And here he is again doing the most ridiculous propaganda. You want to hear? He's going to talk about January 6th. You ready for this? Well, there we go.
He's making friends with all the right people, though, it looks like.
Oh, yeah. He's here with Anne Applebaum.
Staff writer, The
Atlantic.
Incredible.
The Atlantic. He goes right to the top of the propagandists.
It's incredible to me, though, the amount of, and I think the January 6th Commission, for ultimately whatever accountability will be brought to bear in it, the most interesting thing to me is the amount of conversation, the amount of the administration that it takes to undermine a healthy democracy.
That's not even the bad part. I haven't even gotten to the bad part yet. So these people who say this, Kurt, you know, my friend said to me one night, Jimmy, I'll go along with a lot of the stuff you say, but I'm sorry, that January 6th undermined our democracy. And I just looked at him and I go, that's what you think did it?
I just want to put 2 forks on the table and headbutt him.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
January 6th undermine our democracy. A bunch of yahoos in pajama bottoms and buffalo helmets stealing a podium undermine our democracy?
You know how it did? Because it was a display of a bunch of people don't really believe in it. So how all these people think is the same way. It is that adult children alcoholics thing of like, you're making dad look bad. So a display that you don't believe the thing is what the crime is, not whether the thing's true or not. A big display that you don't believe the thing. And that's what January 6th, like more offensive than anything. They don't care about the lives.
They tried to attack our democracy. What? Yeah. That means absolutely nothing.
By saying they thought it was fixed, which I don't.
That means nothing. That they're going to try. So by storming the Capitol, did you think that they were, boy, we just got lucky that they didn't call up the Pentagon and order a military strike? Like, what the fuck did you think they were going to do? They weren't going to do anything.
That it's not like that.
And they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything because they couldn't do anything. They were a bunch of rioters that were pissed off. There was no undermining of democracy on January 6th. The undermining of democracy, Jon Stewart, happened at least 50 years ago when corporations completely bought our government. And since 1980, workers have not had a raise. Used to be, before 1980, workers' wages reflected how productive they were. But productivity and workers' wages have been decoupled since 1980, which is when the corporations completely bought our government. And so now we don't have a democracy. Undermine our democracy. You first have to have a democracy, John, to undermine it. In case you don't know, we live in an oligarchy, and that's been proven by a Princeton study. So what that means is guys like you, who are in the upper 10% of the wealthy in America, when you have a desire, it is reflected back in legislation. When the bottom 80% of Americans have a desire for legislation, it is never reflected back. So what do you know what that means? That means we live in an oligarchy. So we don't live in a democracy. Your democracy was stolen decades ago. And what about Citizens United that the Democrats pretend to care about and want to get rid of because it's completely corrupted our democracy, but then they didn't do anything about it when they had complete control of government? So this idea that somebody cares about democracy or that one party is undermining democracy more than the other party is nothing but propaganda. And it's really sad to see Jon Stewart away from his writers and producers, and with these new producers or whatever, just be an unbelievable, unapologetic propagandist to the point where he gives Nazis medals. He gave a medal to a Nazi for the government. And he didn't apologize for it or acknowledge it. He does it. This doesn't bother him. I guess when you have $100 million, it doesn't bother you. You sit around and you talk to people like other oligarchs, like this lady from The Atlantic. She's a narrative enforcer. And now Jon Stewart is also a narrative enforcer. He doesn't push back against the establishment. And that's what that just told you right there. He's pretending he's put, that's a Democratic Party talking point, that they were undermining democracy, and that's what he's repeating. Wow. Okay, here we go. Here comes the bad part.
The lawyers that have to come in and check things over, absent a military coup, which they also, I think, were laying the groundwork for.
The lawyers have to come in and check things over to make sure that the coup is legal? Is that what he's saying?
He's not making sense. He's acting like the January 6th hearings are an actual hearing instead of a show trial, which is what they are. He's acting like those. That's anything but a complete political theater.
What's going to come out of it? Nothing.
Nothing. He's trying to act like that's anything other than political theater. And he's now he's spreading a mental conspiracy theory that there was going to be a military coup, that they tried to do a military coup, that they were planning. Well, let me play it again.
Absent a military coup, which they also, I think, were laying the groundwork for.
What?
What exactly?
You really think you're going to get the military in the United States to go along with a game show host who just lost an election?
But let's say they were hoping for it. So what? There was none.
Laying the groundwork for a military coup. Is there any mental crazy bullshit about Trump you won't say? Is there any? How about he was also laying ground for a military peeing on him with hookers in a thing? What, is there any crazy thing about Donald Trump that you won't repeat, Jon Stewart?
The military-industrial complex, the term, I first heard from Jon Stewart. Like, I first heard of it from his show. So what is he, like, what does he think that is? Not the coup that took over?
What does he think? The military-industrial complex runs this government, John. It's not the other way around. The government doesn't run them. You think we're in Ukraine because our elected officials came up with an idea that we should go give $100 billion to Ukraine, or that the military-industrial complex and the other oligarchs devised this proxy war with Russia so we can sell more liquefied natural gas and we can break apart the Germany-Russia business connection?
Is the State Department considered part of that complex, I guess?
Yes,
it's a complex,
of course.
Because remember Aaron was saying that the Pentagon was kind of weirdly the voice of reason on it, and the State Department was the one, like, we got to go full, like keep escalating and escalating. And weirdly on the Pentagon, they were like, maybe slow it down a little bit.
Well, they promise all the generals jobs in the military-industrial complex, so that's how they get them to go on TV and advocate for more war all the time. And then the Congress and people in the State Department, they just work directly for whatever they know. They probably had a job whenever industry, our military is trying to steal resources for right now, and they're probably going to go back to work for that. You know what I mean? Like,
maybe he's going to run for president and be our American Zelensky.
He really said this.
It's amazing to me how many fucking meetings autocrats need to take over.
Okay, so Trump didn't take over. He's talking about how many meetings, autocrats. He's talking about, I'll play it again. It's not long.
It's incredible to me, though, the amount of, and I think the January 6th Commission, for ultimately whatever accountability will be brought to bear in it, the most interesting thing to me is the amount of conversation, the amount of the administration that it takes to undermine a healthy democracy. The lawyers that have to come in.
He says healthy. He says healthy. He uses the adjective health. We live in a healthy democracy. I guess if you are, as rich as he is, and has had your ass kissed by the culture for 25 straight fucking years.
These things are pretty great. What?
It's a pretty healthy democracy.
Everything was going really good. But
very healthy until Trump.
All my rich friends are very upset.
Very upset.
We're having shitty parties. And they undermined the enjoyment of like brunches.
That's right. That's what they mean.
Which is what democracy is in the world of.
Yes.
It's over, absent a military coup, which they also, I think, were laying the groundwork for. It's amazing to me how many fucking meetings, autocrats need to take over.
So I don't know exactly what. Does he mean that Trump was trying to take over, or I don't know what he. So I'm not going to try and get in his head and figure out what he meant at that very last part. But holy shit, him still pretending we have a healthy democracy.
Also, what he's describing doesn't sound like a coup at all. It sounds like some legal thing to try to.
Yeah, I know.
It's amazing to me it would take that because it doesn't. That's not how that works.
That's right.
Because it wasn't that, moron.
I like this though. This guy says, "Look who he is talking to, the wife of the Polish politician who thanked the United States for blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline." That's who he's talking to.
It's nice of him to thank us. I think a lot of people didn't thank us.
That was nice that
Germany
they
didn't thank us. Germany, do you have something you want to say?
He's so ensconced in his pseudo reality bubble
Pseudo.
I said pseudo.
Yeah.
So I say pseudo. I'm not supposed to
I
say.
say pseudo, but it's actually pseudo.
It's pseudo. It's not pseudo. He's so ensconced in his.
I think S-O-Y, pseudo, this is good for him.
He's so ensconced in his pseudo reality bubble that he believes Donald Trump's administration was setting up a coup, while General Miley was talking to China and Pelosi about control of the nuclear weapons while undermining the sitting president.
I think pseudo actually works for his. I do.
People like Jon Stewart are so drunk on themselves and have become so convinced of the righteousness of their positions, many of which are empty and constructed on propaganda, like this one, that they'll go to their graves still genuinely believing. I can only analogize it to a cult-like zeal.
There's a word for it. It's called Sean Pennitis.
But it is very cult-like.
Yeah, well, the cult is I'm in the clique. I know. Listen, I got a bunch of friends, and it's not even they won't listen to stuff. Like they'll be like, "Wait, somebody's saying there was Nazis in Ukraine." Like, a couple of friends said to me, "Like, you really didn't know about that?" Because they don't know because they're in a clique of people that are like the.
Well, this speaks to that right there. This guy says what's so fascinating and revealing is who it captured. We're not talking about detached losers in their mom's basement. It's public figures and media heads like John, Sam, Chris, David, etc. And I do believe most of them. So talking about what's captured them is the propaganda.
Yeah, right.
And I do believe most of them to be truly captured. I used to think it was mostly performance from professional clowns like Stewart, but I don't anymore. The moral versus the monsters propaganda has been so thick for so long that some people now live as if they actually shit roses.
Yeah, he's like a Seth Meyers kind of dipshit now,
It's happened to him. It has happened. He's giving medals to Nazis, and that doesn't stop him for a second from continuing to do nonstop establishment propaganda.
It's a real mitzvah. He's forgiving and what is more Jewish?
And again, I'm not
I said on Rogan as many times as I could. It had to have got back to him.
Of course it did.
Know. It had to, right?
Even
I texted Rory, who was his showrunner, about it.
Even Rogan said that, well, he knows about it now.
He must.
Of course. So again, I'm not trying to pretend I'm a better comedian or person than Jon Stewart or whatever. I'm just saying it's sad.
Maybe Jon feels like there's good people on both sides.
It's sad because I used to look up to Jon Stewart. I still think he did a great job on all those things, but it's really sad. And he does insulate himself into a bubble. Even when he goes on non-traditional corporate media, he'll go nowhere to get a tough question.
Not going to risk that sweet position.
You see who he fucking brought on when he talked about COVID and the vaccines? No. He brought on 3 fucking establishment shills. He didn't bring on the people who have been pushing back against the establishment and exposing them for being liars. He didn't bring on Rand Paul, who's exposed Dr. Fauci for lying to Congress. He didn't bring on...
I wonder who his booker is.
He didn't bring on anybody that pushed back against the establishment narrative. He brought on 3 narrative enforcers along with himself.
I bet his booker is some probably millennial, not Zoomer, millennial age.
They're getting all their money from fucking Apple.
Yeah, right. That's why.
I mean, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, they're going to bring on.
Jesus Christ.
He's a one-man Atlantic now.
Yes, he's like the one-man Atlantic.
Yeah.
Jon Stewart, do better. Jesus Christ. He'll never do better. And I'm jealous. I would love to be that out of touch and not know it. Could you imagine how sweet your life is if you're that out of touch and not knowing it?
Yeah, because I saw what happened to poor Andy Kindler. He lost his damn mind. When I think it was got 2011 posted like, they're my Obama times. They all want to live in the Obama times.
Yes, but he didn't lose his mind because his life went so well for him. He did his life because he's a bitter, jealous guy and it ate him up completely.
You're crazy. That's crazy.
Crazy. Hey, we're doing live stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, Tempe, Arizona, Palm Springs, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Nashville, Northampton, Massachusetts, and a lot more places. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets and become a premium member while you're there. You get access to all of our stuff. See you then.